This short video will give you some ideas on how you can start researching your family history. Before we begin, you might like to think about why you want to research your family history. Any reason is a good one, but here are some ideas that might get you thinking. If your ancestors migrated to Australia, you might like to know where they came from and why they came. This handsome couple is John Blight and his wife, Susanna Pulford Pounding. John suddenly up and left his bakery in Plymouth in the 1850s and sailed to the colony of Victoria, leaving Susanna behind with 4 small children. Susanna discovered that she was pregnant, and so she sold John's bakery and gathered up her children and sister-in-law and sailed to Victoria to join John. Shortly after she arrived, her baby was born in a tent on the banks of the Yarra River. John and Susanna were reunited and went on to have another child. The family story is that John left Plymouth in search of gold, but the truth behind the story is that he was bankrupt and fled Plymouth to evade his creditors. Family stories are always good, but sometimes they only contain a grain of truth. Or you might like to know what life was like for your ancestors in the old countries. The pictures here show on the left the wonderful Salem house in Lincolnshire, which my great-great-grandfather built for his family in 1820. Some years ago, I was privileged to be able to visit the house, which is now the office of Bateman's Brewery. On the right of this picture is the Bull's Head Inn in Warwickshire. My ancestor was the licensee of the Bull's Head until he died of delirium tremens, that is, alcohol poisoning. What about in Australia? What was life like for our ancestors in earlier times? On the left, we have Lieutenant Philip Vernon Harris of Dalby, who was killed during World War I in France. We will hear more of him later. On the right is the indomitable Sister Hannah Elizabeth Glover, who was the First Lady Superintendent of the Australian Army Nursing Service in Victoria. So to find out more about these people, or to find out about the people in your family, here are 5 steps that you might follow. First, start with what you know. Document everything about your family. Make a list of family members. Record dates and places of significant events. Seek information from older family members. This is important. I don't know how many times I've heard people say that I should have asked my mother, father, or other relation before they died. Seek information from things that you have at home: Bibles, photographs, letters, certificates, newspaper clippings. On the right, you can see a tattered postcard. It looks rather insignificant, but it was the means by which I was able to identify a whole new branch of the family. So don't underrate anything. Always start with what you know. Do not start with some famous or well-known person and try and link yourself to them, because that's not the way it's done. The picture on the left is John Glover, who was born in Staffordshire, England. He came to Tasmania. He was a renowned watercolour artist. When my interest in family history developed, my aunt said to me, "Oh, we must be related to John Glover. The intelligence has to come from somewhere, dear." Well, we may be related, but I'm yet to find a connection. Always work upwards and outwards, starting with what you know. Step 2, you can go online. One of the advantages of the 21st century is that much information helpful to family historians has been digitised. Most states now have indexes to births, deaths and marriages online, and these are free to search. Here we have the Queensland birth, death and marriage site. You can choose to search births, deaths and marriages all at once, or just pick one or more event. Here I'm searching for the death of my grandmother, Mary Marina Harris, who died in 1956. That's her maiden name, Harris. I enter a small amount of information into the search box and click the search button. Mary Marina Glover, as she then was, died on the 8th of February 1956. As you can see, we have her full name. The registration details include a B, which indicates she died in Brisbane. If she died out of Brisbane, we would have a C for country. Her mother is Marina Jane Ross, and her father is William Marshall Harris. One of the marvellous things about Australian birth, death and marriage certificates is that they provide lots and lots of wonderful information. If I wished, I could purchase this certificate online. Another good example of online records is cemetery records. This is the Toowoomba region website, and we're about to do a deceased search for the Drayton and Toowoomba Cemetery. Many regional councils and cemetery trusts and volunteers have digitised data from cemeteries and make this available online. Here you can see a little bit more about Mary Glover. She was buried on the 10th of February 1956 in Toowoomba, where she lived. She was 79 years old and she was an Anglican. There are many free and subscription websites which have a great deal of information for you to search. A good example is Family Search, which is run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Family Search has been around for years, and one of its biggest advantages is that it's absolutely free. You're probably familiar with the subscription site Ancestry. This is available for members to search at our Library and Resource Centre, along with Find My Past. The Genealogist is another subscription website, which at the moment is free for members to search via the QFHS website from their own homes. It was an innovation of the pandemic, which allowed people to search subscription websites remotely. The last one on this page is Scotland's People, also free to search the indexes, but if you want to see the images of the original records, you need to pay. These are but a few examples of the databases available online. MyHeritage has a unique arrangement with the Queensland Family History Society. MyHeritage makes their database available to all our members, and this isn't conditional on the pandemic. MyHeritage has a very strong presence in European records, but also in British records. One of the good things about subscription databases is that it helps you find the unfindable. My great-grandfather, who was born in the house in Wainfleet, which we saw earlier, proved impossible to find in the 1851 census. I figured he was in London because he was a law student, but the chances of finding him in London before digitisation of the censuses was minimal. This was complicated by the fact that when he was recorded in the census, his name was spelt incorrectly and the name of the village that he was born in was incorrect. You can see the index at the bottom of this page. He was entered as George Maryfield when his real name was George Merrifield. This is something that we have to contend with all the time, where even the simplest name can be spelt incorrectly. His details give you an idea of what you might find on the English census records. You can see his name, relationship to the head of the household, whether he is married or not, and what his occupation is, and where he was born. The information on the censuses varies over time, but it is invaluable in locating and finding out more about British ancestors. One of the greatest innovations of the 21st century is the digitisation of newspapers. On the right, you can see a clipping from the Brisbane Courier regarding the death of Philip Vernon Harris, who we met earlier. You can see the notation about the clipping below the picture. If you went to the Trove website, you would be able to get all the details, including a permanent link to the articles. Trove is free to search. New Zealand has Papers Past, which is also free. The British Newspaper Archive is a compatible site for the British Isles, but it is a subscription site. Members of the Queensland Family History Society can access the British Newspaper Archive from the Library and Resource Centre. There are other free newspaper sites often provided by local, state or national libraries. This is an example from the Gale News Vault, which is available through the National Library of Australia to any person who holds a National Library of Australia card, and that's available to anybody who has an Australian residential address. Step 4, consult archives. An archive is a place where particular records are stored. On a government level, these may be national, state or council archives. Schools and businesses and other organisations may also have their own archives. We will start with the Queensland State Archives. This is the archive search box, and I'm looking for any reference to my grandmother, Mary Marina Glover. I've typed her name into the box and one record has come up. This is a record from the Coroner's Department showing that there will be no inquest into her death. You could go to the State Archives at Runcorn and view this record. QSA also has some online information. Here's an example from the National Archives of Australia. I'm using the record search, then the name search, and I will search World War I records. All the World War I servicemen's records have been digitised. On the left here, you can see a little symbol looking like a sheaf of curled papers, which means the record is available online. The attestation papers of Philip Vernon Harris, this is what we get when we click that little symbol. These files contain multiple pages dealing with all sorts of things, including service records, casualty records, and letters to and from the Department of Veterans Affairs once the war is over. An example of another resource that you could use looking for information on soldiers is the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Commonwealth War Graves Commission records the burial details or the commemoration details of all soldiers who died in any conflict. You can see the details of Philip Vernon Harris, who is buried in France. He died of wounds on the 11th of June 1917, and he was a native of Armidale in New South Wales. Final step in researching your family history is to join like-minded individuals, such as the Queensland Family History Society. Take the opportunity while you are here today to join the society. We hope to see much more of you. Thank you and good luck.